Just like this amazing sunrise, the dawn of the 21st century, 2000, was a new beginning for the motorcycle era in general. Time and time again, I have always told that the Indian biking scenario was pleasantly surprised by a plethora of bikes which came into the market. Similarly, in 2001, Bajaj came to the market with a brand new Pulsar 150. It was very different from the typical scenarios of that time. A 150cc bike which produced about 13 PS of power. It had very strong disc brakes up front and it had a very sporty nature. This appealed our mass market a lot. As sales started to increase thanks to the Duke 200, which was exceptional, it had a lot of sporty character and it appealed our market so well that KTM's 48% is now with Bajaj alone. Thankfully in 2013, something different happened. Well, let me get back to something. 74 years of freedom is what we have with us. We live young, we live free, and this is our notion of every day. 2020 was a bad year for every single person on this earth. There was the huge pandemic that we all dealt with. But it taught us a very important lesson, the importance of inner freedom. The very feeling of freedom lies within us and not with any of the other existential crises. With us motorcycle enthusiasts, I can only say one thing. The freedom is going off the beaten track and off from the tarmac and riding on the open roads. 2013 was a time when KTM came up with a lot of sketches and conceptual designs for the Adventure 390. A pure off-roader that could do endless runs to Spiti or perhaps go from Leh Ladakh or to any other place, trailing endless amount of off-road as you wish. The Adventure 390 was one such bike that people had in mind, which wasn't really what KTM expected. What Bajaj did instead was get us an excellent bike which could do endless amount of touring, crunching more than 1000 kilometers a day, with far excellence than the Duke 390. It just made every single flaw of the Duke 390 non-existent. It was much more pliable, much more easier to ride, something that would help us with our daily commutes and endless touring as well. Is it the bike that we always wanted? Let us find out. Here's the KTM 390 Adventure. There have been two very different KTM 390 Adventure models in development for the past couple of years. The first has been coming together in the R&D departments of Chakan, while the other has steadily been taking shape in the collective imagination of the Indian motorcycle enthusiast. Before I start, I would just like to say that it is not quite the bike that you had imagined it would be. But still, it sure is desirable. In my opinion, it's a really big and brawny bike, of course. When you sit on it, the first impression that you get, it's a big bike for sure. Not as big as the Multistrada for say, but surely way bigger than the BMW G310S or the Hero X Pulse by all means. The length, the width, every single part of this is way bigger than its rivals. As far as the vast stretches of nature go, we are here, about 70 kilometers away from Bangalore center. This place is called as Mandaragiri and we are sitting here in front of Lake Maidala. This place complements the Adventure 390 pretty well, with long stretches of off-road as well as beautiful highways to complement it. The reason why we have come here today is to showcase how this bike actually does in real-time conditions. Second, does it really hold up on our Indian roads? And third, is it actually worth buying it? Let's find out. For far too long, we have been starved of a seriously capable off-road machine that comes at an affordable price. Many, including myself in the early days, saw the upcoming 390 Adventure as just that. A unicorn that would assure complete adventure motorcycling salvation. Bajaj and KTM, however, see things very differently. To them, a market that has a distinct dislike for tall seats and one that never embraced off-road motorcycling. Not that we have really been given a decent chance, simply isn't ready for a hardcore machine. Slotting itself between the street-going 390 Duke and the enduro-ready 350 XCF, the 2020 KTM 390 Adventure is a fascinating motorcycle that is impressively versatile. In the wake of the successful 790, KTM continues to downsize the ADV experience, and the new 390 Adventure is undoubtedly the most attractive of its adventure line to those new to the genre. However, the experienced rider will also discover that good things do come in small packages. A small displacement adventure bike that is approachable, versatile, economical and fun isn't anything new in the market. There have been a number of small ADVs filling out this category for several years now, but they tend to be more adventure style than bike. So when the ready-to-race brand jumped into the game, there were certain expectations regardless of price. But have they hit their mark? This bike has quite some presence, and in person you'll realize that 390 ADV is a considerably large machine. Thankfully, it isn't as hefty as the 199 kg Himalayan, but at 177 kg curb weight, it's about 8 kg more than the BMW. Substantial it may be, but the 390 Adventure isn't really pretty. Just like KTM's big ADV family, its trademark insect-like styling is instantly recognizable, but it's not for everyone. There are a few interesting details though. The fuel tank plastic, for example, is infused with color instead of being painted, and this should help keep a cleaner look after time's effect of scratches and general wear.
There are a few interesting off-road details too. The rubber foot pegs, for example, can be unscrewed to reveal toothy metal serrated pegs for better grip on off-road trails, especially when you're using the balls of your feet to grip them.
While the toe section of the gear lever is sprung, which will protect it in case. The foot brake extension at the end is bolted to the lever arm separately, so even if that breaks off, you still should be able to use the lever to make your way back home. The engine bash guard is made of plastic, with a small metal section around the front left area where the exhaust pipe is routed through. Finally, the brush guards and engine guard protector are part of the standard equipment list. As far as comfort and practicality go, this bike is miles ahead of anything else KTM offers in India. The 14.5 litre fuel tank is the largest on any India-made KTM to date, and you should easily get well over 300 km on a tank full. A new subframe has liberated vast seating space for the rider, and there's a decently sized pillion seat as well. If you have been managing with the cramped space that remains after mounting luggage on your KTM Duke, this level of space is nothing short of luxurious. Technology-wise, there's the now familiar full LED headlamp that comes right off the 390 and 790 Duke. The TFT display is also nearly the same, but this one can display turn-by-turn navigation assist if you purchase the optional ₹600 KTM Myra navigation app. And then of course, there's the headline-grabbing electronic assist. This bike gets a bi-directional quick shifter, and that works decently well, if not as smooth as crisply as the system on the 790 Duke, though I found it very jaggedy under 4000 revs. There's also a 3-axis IMU that enables a cornering ABS feature as well as a corner-sensitive traction control system. The ABS can't be turned off completely, but you can switch it to an off-road mode, which deactivates the rear end and loosens the intervention at the front wheel. In theory, the traction control system can be switched off too, but this is another bit that we'll get into a little later. First things first, the ergonomics are quite decent in terms of the feet positioning and shape of the fuel tank, but most of us agreed that we'd have liked the taller handlebar for when standing up and riding. Over the rocky sections, the suspension has a firm and taut feel that gets the job done fairly well, but over-inflated tires meant that things were quite bouncy the first time we headed out. Albeit, I would really have expected the bike to have adjustable front and rear just as the European counterparts have them, and this misses out on a lot of adjustability we would have got and made for a better setup on the off-road and the on-road trails as well. Switching to the faster, more open trails, the 390's trademark rackless power delivery was great fun, especially when you cross the magic 6000 RPM mark. But just as the 390's excellent top-end thrills in the fast stretches, its grumpy bottom end makes it an absolute pain when climbing steep and technical trails at low speeds. There is absolutely no significant pull below 3000 RPM, and you have to slip the clutch quite a bit to get things going. Shorter gearing or at least a change in the final drive ratio would have been nice here, but the setup is identical to that of the 390 Duke. In an off-road settings, most of the KTM's advanced assists aren't really desirable. The off-road ABS mode worked beautifully, but the same can't be said for the traction control. Most of us encountered an unusual issue where the TC would randomly cut in briefly, robbing you of all the power, and this was with the system fully turned off and while the engine was running. I even experienced the TC randomly switching itself back on. But the way I see it, this behavior was either due to the TC system misbehaving or an issue with the fueling. When you're navigating through a tricky off-road section, it's not a nice feeling to be suddenly deprived of power, and this is something KTM needs to look into. While the 390 ADV was fun in the fast off-road stretches, it's really not designed or equipped to truly enjoy the particular terrain we put it through. Its 170 mm of suspension travel is adequate but not fantastic. And since the fork has no adjustability in the Indian market, we couldn't back off from the compression rebound settings, which would have been helpful over those big boulders and trails. The tubeless Metzeler Torrent tires were out of their element in this hard washboard style terrain. What proved to be adequate though was the 200 mm of ground clearance. Overall, the 390 ATV will get through whatever you point it at. But it's clear that this is no enduro motorcycle. It's on the road where the Adventure's 1.5 degrees increase in steering rake and 77 mm increase in wheelbase over the 390 Duke could reveal their biggest change. While we did get to evaluate its high-speed stability over 120 km per hour, it's clear that this bike feels nothing close to as fidgety or on edge as the Duke. Instead, there's an enjoyable sense of stability, which comes without a major sacrifice in agility and front-end feel, despite the 19-inch front wheel. Another enjoyable aspect is the firm and sharp feel from the front brake lever. This comes as no surprise as it uses the 320mm disc setup from the Duke. But what you should know that this is the bike that will be easier for taller riders. On road, the 855mm seat height will be just about manageable if you're over 5 feet 6 inch, but things can get quite tricky off-road if you don't have long legs to mask a lack of talent. Performance-wise, the BS6 engine makes the same 43 bhp and 37 Nm of torque as the BS4 motor in the 390 Duke, although the exhaust note sounds a bit more muffled. It has always been a thriller of an engine with all the power that you ever needed on our roads, and that hasn't changed. What's new, however, is a redesigned curved radiator with a dual fan setup. The intention is to improve cooling efficiency and redirect the hot air away from the rider, and I absolutely loved how efficient it was in the drudgery of big city traffic. But should I buy one? This is the very first KTM I have ridden where the company is trying to do an approachable rather than the typical and infectious ready to race. Initially, I felt a bit let down, but it's not hard to see KTM's point of view. When you do see this bike for what it really is, you realize this is just the sort of motorcycle our country really needs. It's got the capability to go almost anywhere, but it also looks to be a fantastic long-distance road bike. And then there's the price. To be getting all these segment-bursting features at Rs 2.99 lakh ex-showroom is simply stunning. If KTM could have offered a reliable and niggle-free experience from the start, the 390 Adventure could have been a special machine. But trust me, it sure is, nevertheless.
The mind-boggling fact about the KTM 390 Adventure is that despite being the same as the 390, it feels much more better off the road and also on the tarmac. Everyone would feel that this was an off-road offering from the KTM side, but sadly, do not be mistaken. This is a much better bike than the 390 on its own. Because of the extended wheelbase and the much better ergonomics, this is an excellent tourer for you guys. There are certain ways that KTM has skimmed on the quality to serve justice for the pricing. For example, the European counterparts have Apex adjustable suspension both at the front and back. That's a much required unit on the 390 out here. Honestly speaking, this has a lot of places where it could be improved for off-road riding as well. Spoke rims would be better. 19-inch wheels doesn't really serve all the purpose as well. There is a lot of improvement yet to be done, and the 14-tooth front sprocket addition is a much better advantage to it. The 15-tooth up front just doesn't offer enough low-end bite to it. Honestly speaking, a lot of things should have been bespoke, and the stock windscreen isn't good at all. There's a lot of places where the vibes are hitting very strongly and this doesn't feel good to ride. The lack of good quality checks make it cumbersome for the people to rely on KTM. Despite having a lot of advantage of make in India, this still feels really difficult for us to own. Honestly, the KTM is a very friendly machine and this feels exceptional to ride whether on road or off the track. To make this more friendly to tour, there's a lot of accessories, and there's this company called as Motorin which is providing a lot of accessories for pretty good pricing. Example, the grills on the headlight provide a much needed protection for the headlamps on dirt tarmac. The headlight grill offers protection from gravel being thrown apart from the back of a truck or a bus. Motorin also offers crash guards to protect your fairings at the time of a crash. There are amazing ways to make this more viable for touring as well. When you have something for the long haul, there are stays and even top racks for you to load on luggages as well. Despite its shortcomings, the 390 is an excellent bike to own. The competitors are the GS310 and of course the X-Pulse, but there is not really much competition to this in this segment. For under 3 lakhs ex-showroom, this is one of these bikes which you should own in your garage as a secondary bike to tour along in long hauls.
Until next time, get set, anarchy.